As we prepare for the latest All Black test against the Wallabies, there are several factors to consider. First is the bad news for the All Black supporters. In a World Cup year, the record of the All Blacks playing in Australia is very poor. Not counting 1987 and 1995, where the Bledisloe Cup games were played after the World Cup, the All Blacks have won just 1 out of 6 tests in Australia in a World Cup year. In 1991, we lost 21-12 in Sydney. In 1999, we lost 28-7 in Sydney. In 2003, we did win in Sydney, 50-21. However, at the same venue several months later, we lost to Australia in the World Cup semi-final. In 2007, we lost in Melbourne, 20-15. In 2011, we lost in Brisbane, 25-20. And finally, in 2015, we lost in Sydney, 27-19. The one good thing about that loss, though, in 2015, was that Nehi Milner-Skudder made his test debut. He scored 2 tries, and it proved to the coaches and selectors that he could play at the international level, and he was very valuable for the All Blacks at the World Cup later that year. Okay, so for those that are saying the past has nothing to do with this game, with this upcoming game, yes, that's true, but it's interesting how history tends to repeat itself over and over and over again. I'm telling you, it happens. Secondly, from a statistical point of view, I always bring this up when we play Australia. It's like I'm a broken record. But 27 is the magic number. Anytime we score 27 or more points against Australia, we win. We're 34-0 in the professional era. When we score 26 or less, our winning percentage drops down to under 50%. Now, people will tell you the more points the Wallabies score, the better the chance they have of beating the All Blacks, which is, makes sense. However, in 10 test matches, Australia have scored 28 or more points against the All Blacks. And how many of those 10 did they win? 3. Only 30% of those high-scoring games did they win. So the Wallabies would be best served to keep the game tight, do a lot of kicking, box kicking, up and unders, even kicking into touch quite often, just to stop the flow and the rhythm of the game. Because the more expansive the game, the better it is for the All Blacks, not for the Wallabies. I mean, the Wallabies scored 35 points against the All Blacks in one test match. That's the most they've ever scored in a test. And they lost 39-35 in 2000, the game that was made in heaven or played in heaven or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, thirdly, let's look at the selections for the All Blacks. They've opted to start Ardie Savea at blindside flanker, probably to the joy of a lot of New Zealand fans, because after all, Ardie Savea is awesome. And don't get me wrong, Ardie is a fantastic player. In fact, I would rate him as our best loose forward in the last 12 months. Certainly our healthiest, but our best loose forward. And it doesn't matter whether he's coming off the bench, whether he's starting at loose head or at open side, starting at number 8, and now starting on the blind. He will be awesome. However, with him in the starting lineup, that might affect our bench. And our bench won't have as much impact as they usually do at the end of games. And what we've seen so far this year is our lack of finishing. In the second half against Argentina, we scored 0 points. And against South Africa, I think we kicked 2 penalty goals in the second half. And South Africa scored the winning, well, not the winning try, but for them, the winning, but the game-drawing try on full time. So we ended up with the draw rather than the win. So we're not finishing games very strongly. And having someone like Ardie Savea not coming off the bench, that might affect it. Now, Matt Todd, he's the loose forward reserve. Now, he's a solid player. I like Matt Todd. But he's not really your impact X-factor type of coming off the bench player. He's not a guy that's going to explode for 50 meters down the sideline. He's not a guy that's going to break tackles just with sheer determination and with, pumping his legs as hard as Savea does. He's just not that kind of bench, not that kind of player. So I think our finishing and our bench might suffer because of that. And the same could be said about Richie Mo'unga, who's starting at first 5 again with Beauden Barrett fullback. It kind of takes away his effectiveness, because coming off the bench, he's fresh, he can penetrate tiring defences quite easily. And like last week or 2 weeks ago against South Africa, he looked okay as a starter. But coming off the bench in Pretoria last year against South Africa, he was the man. He was the key to our win. And he, along with other bench players like, I don't know, Adi Savia, were huge for us winning that game, coming back at the end to win that game. So the introduction of these two very good players in the starting 15 is great, but it might hurt us later in the game. And it also shows, I think, the All Black coaches, selectors, their lack of confidence in who's going to be the blindside flanker starter and who's going to start for us on the right wing. Because of that, they've had to move people around. Ben Smith's has to play on the wing rather than fullback, even though he's our best fullback. Beauden Barrett has to play fullback, even though he's our best first five. So it really shows that we're not sure who we want on the right wing and the blindside flank. And I don't even think that Adi Savia is a long-term option at blindside flanker, nor do I think Ben Smith is a long-term option at wing. But so there's a lot of things to consider for the All Blacks, not only in this game, but in the prior to the World Cup. So if you thought Savia's selection on the blindside was surprising, what about James O'Connor at centre? Really? At centre? In place of Kurandrani? And with a defensive liability, Samu Karevi inside him? I do like the decision to keep Kurtley Beale at fullback, though. I think that's his best position. And I think he's really dangerous. He's got a great sidestep. He's got good speed, and I think he's a really X-factor player that Australia has. Finally, there are injuries, and the biggest one for the All Blacks, obviously, is Brodie Retallick. And it goes without saying how important he is to the All Blacks or to any team that he's a part of. In fact, the last time we lost to Australia, back in 2017 in Brisbane, guess who wasn't playing? Brodie Retallick and Beauden Barrett, for that matter. So with all this in mind, despite our poor record in these games, I'm still picking an All Black win. To be honest, I always pick the All Blacks to win. I figure if I pick the All Blacks to win, then I'm right 90% of the time. So sweet as. So I say 27-23 in favour of the All Blacks in Perth.